Welcome to the Deconstructed Woman podcast, a podcast about breaking down barriers between women, exploring and sharing perspectives of each individual woman's experience, and discovering what we have in common and what makes us different. Hosted by Elisa Marie and Joji. Welcome back to the Deconstructed Woman podcast. So today we wanted to try out something different by having a panel of women of various ages and generations to sit down and talk about what are some of the most pressing things that are influencing us at this time in our phase, season, if you will, of our lives. So we're going to go from youngest to oldest. We have a range of ages from 20 to 70 and beyond. And so we have kind of a varied perspective. And I know that Joji and I have spent a lot of time talking about different different aspects of things that have affected us as women, and to be able to have the opportunity to hear from other people, I think is just a really rich and exciting opportunity. So, Tara, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you kind of give us some idea of what's impacting you at this time, and then we'll kind of go along to each of our panelists.
Hi, so my name is Tara and I'm 20 years old. I'm currently in college at Illinois State. And I feel like one of the biggest things impacting me at this point in my life would probably be I'm in a STEM field, so it's very male dominated. So, a lot about finding my place and where I want to be in this field, and then dealing with imposter syndrome, going into something that I've never done before, and also that is just heavily dominated by people who don't look like me or have the same background as me.
All right. My name is Sarah. I'm 29 years old. And I would say what's impacting me or perhaps on my mind the most is the fact that I left the workforce a couple years ago just to focus on being a mom. And my struggle or what's on my mind is being the best mom I can while also not forgetting to be my own person and still figure out where my place is in the world.
I'm Dee. I'm 36. I'm a mom of three boys and I'm married. And right now, really the thing that's most on my mind is how to help my family thrive across all the different aspects of our life.
I think I'm next. So most of our listeners, hopefully that's correct. Most of our listeners know me. I'm Elisa Marie, and uh, this is me and Joji's podcast. But I think that, goodness, I we prepared the question, but I don't know that I actually thought really down hard about what's most pressing for me. I think I could probably reflect some of what Dee said. And I am 40 this year. So I think for me, probably the most pressing is just trying to find my footing in parenting. I have four children, all under the age of 9. And so finding kind of what I want that to look like, and how to kind of navigate all of the different aspects of working full time, managing a household, and parenting our children.
I'm next. I'm in my mid 50s, and this is Joji. And I am relatively new to the world of being a grandparent, which then has increased my desire to live a healthy and full life. And so staying healthy and being around for many years to come is probably what I spend a lot of time thinking about now.
Hi, I'm Sandy, and I'm 78 years old or 78 years young. I recently became a great grandmother. I have three great grandchildren. And I think my biggest challenge that I have faced in my 70s, 70 seems to be the magic year, is health concerns. I've always been very active and very physical, but I've experienced a lot of um, health problems, and I'm trying to see how I can deal with those and surpass them.
I'm Pat. I'm 77 years old. Sorry, Sandy. Um, and I'm very impressed with an amazing group of people. Even just the little bit that we've everybody has talked. It sounds like very dynamic group. Um, but what's most pressing to me, I think, is being a good grandma and trying to figure out how to do that and how life changes and relating differently to my two sons. And the elephant in the room is my concern currently is the outcome of the election. So that has pressing effects on me right now, not for myself, but for my granddaughters in their future. So that that's all I have to say about that.
So, as a follow up question, for each of you, and now we can just sort of jump in as you want to share your thoughts about this. But I'm just thinking, do you have a plan that's formulated for how you're going to approach this time in your life? Would you like input from folks on this group on some questions you might have? So just opening it up for just commentary and sharing thoughts.
I would say one thing that I'm trying to do is not plan too far in advance, because what I've learned with trying to explore like my place in the world, if you will, is that it's never going to go as I thought it would. So I think taking things day by day between being a mother and trying to figure some stuff out in my professional life is the best approach, and being open to, kind of curveballs and trying to decipher what are opportunities and trying to decipher what may be a setback, but still using that to keep propelling yourself forward. So I would say overall, take things day by day and don't plan too much.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Sarah. I think as a recovering perfectionist, I think that's really hard sometimes. And I find myself having to let go of certain things. I think my focus lately has been okay, I'm really stressed and overwhelmed a lot of the time, and recognizing that I have to take things off my plate and kind of lessen that as I go, because it bleeds into like how I present for my family. And so I love the idea of going day to day, because I think that sometimes that, even just that mindfulness that I know Joji and I have talked about on the podcast before, like being in the present is just such a struggle, because my mind's thinking about the 25 things I have to do before I even get in the car to go to work every day. And that seems to be where, I have to kind of bring it back and say, okay, maybe not even day to day, but moment to moment of what is in my control, what can I do, and then going from there.
I completely agree with the idea of like trying to take opportunities as they come. And I know for me personally, I have almost overstacked the amount of opportunities I get because they always say don't pass up anything and everything will, impact your future, butterfly effects. Like you should take every opportunity given to you. And I think it's been interesting recently how my point of view has changed on how I view the opportunities that are given to me. So instead of now just taking every single one, I have learned to step back and look more at the opportunities given to me and how they will impact my future versus how they're going to impact my short term, or whether the opportunity that's given to me is something that's going to help me or if it's just going to help others in certain ways. Um, so I completely agree with the having to step back and realizing that if there is too much on my plate or if I need help and to ask someone for that, and I don't have to take every single opportunity given to me just because there's a potential that it'll help me in the future.
Tara, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the imposter syndrome and being a female in a male dominated industry, because I think that in your 20s, I think that imposter syndrome, I think imposter syndrome happens to all of us. I think if we all could raise our hands and say how many of us suffer from that, I think we would all pretty much say that we don't feel that we have earned the right to do fill in the blank, right? But I do think that looking back now, being 50 and looking back at the 20s, I think it's a very natural way to feel because you're so new in your exploration of your career and who you're going to become. And so, but I don't want you, and you're not, I know you're not, because I know you well, that you're not letting it stop you and you're going after the things that you want. But I think that we as women spend a lot of time in our lives wasted worrying about if people are going to realize that we're not really what we say we are. And I think other people I would ask for your input, but I feel like that's something that society brings out in us. And if you can quiet that voice, you will be a lot happier when you get to where you want to be. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
I don't think any woman can feel comfortable today. I mean, women's lives were just set back 100 years, this recent election, and maybe we don't want to talk about that. but every single person is going to be impacted, and women the most. And I think we need to look at that. We can't run away from it. We can't ignore it.
And I think part of doing that is the friends that we make along the way, the people that we allow into our inner circle that are supportive. And that doesn't mean always telling us that we're right and we're great and we're terrific. The people who have the courage to say, you know, you're going too fast, you're going too slow, speed it up, take it easy. Don't be so hard on yourself. Don't be so hard on your whatever. But the things that you really need to hear to help support you, because I think women by and large are the best supporters of women if they will be, if they will allow themselves to be.
Absolutely.
Something that I have two thoughts about the imposter syndrome. And one is the fact that if something, it's sometimes underrated, that if something comes easy to you or you really enjoy it, then you're probably better at it than you think you are, right? If something's coming easy to you, we tend to see it as, oh, it's easy, so everybody can do it. But that's not the case, right? So just because something is easy for you doesn't mean it's easy for somebody else. Or if you're good at something or have an idea about something, doesn't mean everybody else has that same idea. So don't undervalue the things that you enjoy and you're good at. Also, the other thought was in imposter syndrome. So I'm a therapist. And one of the things that I focus on with my clients the most is really working on our beliefs about our worth, about what we deserve, and about things that we can accomplish. So, negative beliefs are something that is important to get curious about and see one, where they stem from, two, are they really true? And also, are they serving us? Is that something that's helping us, motivating us, or creating a sense of accomplishment? Or are they doing the opposite? Are they making us anxious? Are they creating dread? Are they making us feel like the world is out to get us? And those would be my 2 cents on that topic.
I think that's really important. I look at my grandchildren, and the one is almost 2 years old. And she is just so rambunctious and so full of herself and so happy and will tell you no in a heartbeat. And you tell her no, and she just keeps going. She just is so determined. And I look at that and I think that's how we all were at some point in our life. And who came along and put this sit down, be quiet, be a lady, be ladylike, you know, those kinds of limitations were put upon us. I think we're born with the drive to go and to accomplish and to do and to have dreams and to say no and even give somebody the raspberries if you think they need it. And then we grow up and we can't really do that. We can't scream our head off when we want to, but uh, or smile and endear everybody in the room to you. So I'm just really struck by how many of us, and I used to be a psych nurse, so I realized that people are so influenced by their upbringing, which is not an excuse because once you realize it, then you have to do something about it. But uh, I'm just, I just think it's so beautiful to be a child that has been reined in. There's got to be something in each of us of that child still. And
Yeah.
I encourage people to track that down and let it go.
Well, and I think my first response is the parents. The parents are the ones that are like, sit down, be quiet, kind of reining them in. But I appreciate that, Patricia, because I think that that's one of the things that I struggle with in parenting is that I have a very strong willed 3-year old and she challenges me in so many ways. But I keep saying to myself, like, she's going to, rule the
Oh,
world someday. I mean, that
yeah.
strong willedness of hers, her drive, her desire to tell you how it is, exactly, how she feels. I mean, she screams a lot, but in some ways I embrace that because I know that that's something I don't want her to lose that. I want her
Right.
to stay that way, maybe rained a little bit like in certain circumstances. But that's something that I really struggled with because my parents in particular are like, why is she yelling? Why is she like the expectation is that she sits at the dinner table and doesn't say a word? And I'm like, that's not her personality, one. And also she's a child. Like, let her be that way. And so I have a real struggle with that because that's what I want to foster, but at the same time, I feel like sometimes we get the opposite of message of not only from society, from our families, from complete strangers will be like, we were in church last night and the gentleman in front of us kept looking back because she was whispering, I mean, whispering loudly, but like kept looking back and giving us a dirty look. And I was like, oh, we're trying here. Like, I think that it's just like you get all these messages from all around you saying, hey, you're supposed to be this certain way. And then if we try to break out of that, we get that pushback.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel, when it comes to that kind of stuff is that, as Joji said, which I appreciate, I am very much a person that like, okay, I feel this and I know that like I can see past the fact that I'm not an imposter and that there's a lot of stereotypes and a lot of things in the field that make me feel that way. And one person that definitely helps with that is my mom. Coming from the other side of that is that she's never been the kind of parent who is like, sit down and be quiet. She's definitely the kind of parent that's like, if you don't speak your mind, someone else will, and you're gonna have to follow along with that. She was a very big, you're not a follower, you're a leader to your core. Like you don't do that kind of stuff. And
Wonderful.
my mom is she has an amazing personality, a very big personality. And a lot of what has gotten me this far has been her parenting. And I do know that depending on parenting can be a huge, like there's people I know whose parents are completely different and they are completely different from me just because they were taught for a lot of their lives, like be silent, follow the crowd. Like you can cause problems if you don't do that versus my mom who's very much like, you need to like get out there and be yourself and do these things. Otherwise you're not going to get where you want. And so a huge part of who I am today is due to my parenting and due to the fact that my mom let me be that rambunctious, opinionated, outspoken person that now I feel that I have more power than a lot of people in my position do just because I was raised to know that like just because you're a woman doesn't change anything. That should
Right.
make you more powerful instead of less.
I've always been very outspoken and comfortable around people, but I speak my piece. And I think the reason I do that is I was raised to be silent. Children were to be seen and not heard. That was the
Yep.
philosophy parents had. And I went just the opposite.
And that's why I know both of you because both of you have that kind of personality. I wanted to follow up with you, Sandy, on something you said about your goals and what's pressing you, since we both talked about health, but I am looking forward trying to stay healthy. And I've known you for, I don't know, probably 25 years. And I remember how active you were and how you were just that individual that pushed your limits physically. And so I guess I'm trying to think about what can I learn from your experience, given the fact that you were really an active person and you wanted to stay that way for as long as you could. Do you feel that now in your late 70s that um, that your body is just that it's your body is just it's taking a toll on your body for just the fact that your body is going to be good for so many years? Or do you think that, in terms of you reflecting on what you could have done, I'm just wondering what I can learn from your experience?
Well, I think I've always led a very healthy lifestyle and I was very active. And I mean, I was in my late 60s and even into my early 70s. I was still walking, 4 or 5 miles a day and
Mm.
working out 3 or 4 times a week. I feel like I kind of got blindsided though. It was like everything my heart started to, slow down too much. So I needed a pacemaker. And then they had a growth in the thyroid. And then I needed back surgery. And I still need back surgery. And so now I'm dealing with trying to, I was ready to have back surgery. I finally agreed to it. And then I ended up going into AFib. These are things that were totally not expected in my life, that I never saw it coming. So I'm having a hard time dealing with it because it's like, wait, I want my life back. Somebody just took the real me. I'm still here. I still want to get out there and walk 5 miles, but the pain I experience of walking 2 blocks is holding me back. So yeah, I feel I'm a little bit angry about it because, like, I wasn't expecting it. I know I'm older. I'm old. I don't like to say the word old. I'm older. And but I just didn't think that that was ever going to be me. I wasn't going to be complaining about my aches and pains, but it's not just me. I see so many people in my age group going through the same struggles. And if you haven't, then that's wonderful. But so many, I live in a 55 and older community and I see it. Nobody has, I still have my body parts, but most of the people I know don't even have those anymore. They're on their second set. So yeah, it's a little disconcerting. I'm still trying to keep. So what I've done in response to this is I set a goal. I booked a 15-day trip to Italy in May, and that's my goal. Is that I'm going to get past all this, and then I'm going to be ready to go on that 15 days of touring Italy. So that's my that's the way I'm dealing with my negativity that I was feeling.
Well, I appreciate that because that's that is living life on life's terms, right? You set a goal that's going to have a beautiful, wonderful experience at the end of achieving that goal. So that's the right way to look at it for sure. Now, Dee, I wanted to ask you. I didn't fully understand everything you were talking about. What's pressing on your life at this stage in your life? Would you mind speaking more about that?
Sure. At this point, we're actually doing pretty well as a family after quite a bit of trauma with the births of our three kids. So right now we're just focusing on how can our family thrive. There was a point in time where I was talking to my own therapist, and I was like, I know I can survive this. I know we as a family can survive. My middle child was born with heart defect. My first child was premature. So I was just like in the midst of trauma about 5 years ago. And I told my therapist, I know we can survive it, but I want us to thrive. And so now that we're kind of out of the survival mode of it, we're just focusing on, okay, how do we make sure that our kids have what they need and are able to both explore their interests as well as um, just keep up with schoolwork and make sure they're developing correctly and meeting their milestones. But also, as a couple, me and my husband, are really focusing on what we can do to grow. And just individually, exploring different new interests, how we can still continue to build our identity.
So it sounds like finding the balance between um, raising a family and continuing to strengthen your relationship with your husband and keep all of that in balance because you, your kids' activities, what you and your husband may want to do together, and just moving on from sort of the trauma or the emotional roller coaster all of you have been on for the last several years.
Less so about balancing family life and more so about making sure that everybody has the best opportunity to grow to the extent that they're able to at this point in our life.
Anybody have any thoughts about that could help Dee out?
I don't know if I have any thoughts, like answers, but I can just say that, like, that idea of fostering your own growth as well as your children, like, that's something that I think is beautiful. And I think that I don't think that for me, I actually consciously thought of that. Like, I'm still trying to figure out how I want to respond to my kids. But I think that the idea of making sure that everybody's thriving is just such an important part of like our role, at this stage of life. And I think that also finding your own balance, and finding your own interests and things like that that you were talking about, that's an area that I struggle with. And I know Joji and I have talked about like, for self-care, I'm still trying to figure out what that looks like because I don't think that I lost my identity when I became a mother. Like I always identify myself as like who I am in my profession, and I have all of these different hats that I wear. And so being a mother never kind of consumed me, but I think that in some ways I lost because I turned my focus so much so on my kids that I lost the ability to then turn it back on myself and say, "Hey, what do you need?" And that's something that I've talked about. I don't know if that aligns with where you're at, D, because I think that you might have a better grasp of kind of what lights you up and what helps you. But I know for me, that's the piece that um, both my husband and I are trying to figure out right now, too.
And I will say, as a mom of, I only had one child, but I think that what I wanted to bring to the conversation for you, Dee, is whether your children have developmental issues or health concerns based on birth defects, prematurity. My daughter was also premature. I think that as they get older and some of that stuff gets further and further away from your sort of immediate consciousness, I think some of the challenges that we all have raising our kids is our kids who want to do something that they may not be capable of doing. You may not want them in that particular arena for safety or other things, or they just may not be good at it. One of the things that I struggled with my daughter was that she wasn't from an athletic standpoint, she wanted to do everything, but she wasn't necessarily very good at it, and it would frustrate her because she wanted to, she wanted to be in the middle of it. And for her, activities always had a social component. She always led with the social component. And then one day in high school, she found the sport that defined her, and then all of a sudden, we saw this different child emerge and it checked all the boxes for her physicality and also her love and her interest, and she hit her stride. So sometimes I think as parents, we worry a lot about helping our kids find their place. And as a parent, what that meant for me was, trying soccer and volleyball and gymnastics and, whatever, and making sure she had every opportunity to find the sport. And then lo and behold, she found her passion on her own, had nothing to do with me. And it's like, I guess the the wisdom in that is that they find their way, and that even if we as parents try to create that opportunity for them, they may actually perceive that as pressure or telling them how to make their decisions. And I think that nature has things fall in place in a specific way that it's meant to. And it sort of takes the pressure off of us because I felt a lot of pressure to make sure that I was able to give her what she needed, and then she totally schooled me on it and did it on her own. So I guess just sort of a reflection from my past in terms of how that might, if there's anything in that for you, just wanted to share that experience.
I feel like the idea of we're going to find our children's path for them is not necessarily. I think as parents, we're there to teach them right from wrong, to teach them to have goals, to teach them respect, and to encourage them at all costs to be themselves and to applaud that and appreciate that. And then they find their way. And people will say to me, you've done a really good job raising this son. And I'm like, I taught him, he made his choices, and he's a wonderful guy. He's a really good man. But he made his choices when the time came along. I didn't do that for him. He chose his life. And but I think I did give him the basics. And I think that's really, as a parent, that's all you can expect from yourself because that's really a big deal. It's a big deal. to teach your children those basic things and then allow them to use that to get to where they want to go, which is not always where you want them to go.
I am not a parent myself, so I can't speak too much to that, but I am a child of someone. And I think that one of the biggest things that has helped me succeed, seeing it is like I recently graduated high school. I'm just now in college. And like one of the biggest things is I'm a first generation college student. So a lot of times my family, we are very close, but they questioned whether they were going to be enough to get me to where they know I wanted to be, but also where they wanted me to be. And that they were going to be able to give me these opportunities and resources, which I think is what Dee was touching on too, giving her children the best opportunities they can have. And I feel personally that I was given amazing tools to get to those opportunities,
There,
even though they couldn't directly provide them to me. So my speaking on the women in my family, my mom, my grandma, my aunt, they're very strong people who gave me a lot of each of them gave me something different to go off into the world with. And just having those tools has created so many opportunities for me because they knew that I what I wanted was something that I was going to get. They can just hand me the tools to get there. So I feel that that's where a lot of my personal successes come from is the tools that I was given by those women in my family who are very strong-willed and very outspoken has gotten me to where I am. Not the opportunities they gave me, but the tools they gave me. I mean, they also gave me the opportunities, but the tools I feel like are the personal part that I feel helped me the most.
Those are all great points, and I appreciate you guys sharing. Been my greatest joy watching my kids really develop their own interests, develop their personalities, and really show me where they need my support. I think as a social worker, it's been drilled into me that everybody um, is an expert on their own really life and their own experience. And I've really brought that into my parenting, I think, where while I guide my kids the best I can, and sometimes, I have to be the parent and make the judgment call, but for the most part, I really enjoyed listening to my kids, seeing where they are, and really reflecting to them who they are, who I see them to be, what their strengths are. And I think in that, it really helps them to, even when they have moments of jealousy or envy of like, he can do this or he's faster at this, to really bring it back to, yeah, but you're better at this and it doesn't really matter. Um, and also I think my biggest struggle in really supporting my kids has been not putting my own like the ideas and struggles from my growing up onto them, right? The anxieties that I have for like imposter syndrome or what I can or can't do or different societal or religious or other programming onto them in a fear-based way so that, they don't grow up with the same kind of limiting thought patterns and behaviors that I had to grow up with. So I think that's been the biggest challenge that I've struggled with is just really making sure that they do grow up to be confident. And while I want them to be cautious and have common sense, um, I want them to really be open to new experiences and be willing to try new things.
I'd like to make one comment. I've heard this whether you have kids or not. Now I raised 3 kids, but one thing that I hear in most of you that do have children is that your kids will be okay if you're okay.
yeah,
But so many women neglect themselves in their honest attempt to be good parents. They lose themselves. And that is not does not set a good role model for your children. You need to take care of yourself, and it's okay to take care of yourself.
yeah,
Uh, does not mean you're not going to be a good mother, but please do not neglect yourself and put everything, all your eggs into your children. Your children will respect you more if if you respect yourself.
yeah,
Very much so. But the argument I hear about that the most is the lack of a village, right? Is the biggest reason why we do give so much to our children is because there isn't anybody else to support us. Um, and, I immigrated from Poland when I was 13. My entire family's in Poland. We have very limited support on my husband's side. And it is basically just us trying to balance, oh, my husband wants to go out with his friends, then I mean, not stuck at home with three kids, but I have to figure out what we're going to do. How are we still okay with that so that we can support him, right? And if I want to do things like this panel or do things like, the my continue education or just engaging in my own interests of drumming, it's so much harder to then figure out how to get that done so that everybody's needs are met and nobody's overburdened.
Yeah, I resonate with that so much so, and I think it takes I read this book, I didn't finish it, but it's Hunt Gather Parent, and it talks about the fact that in so many other cultures, the family is all, under one roof or in the community or in a village or whatever, and I think that a lot of times it feels very isolating to be, to even try to develop that. I mean, we live 7 hours away from my family and 5 hours away from my husband. So we also, families nearby, but not nearby enough that they would come over for an evening or, a weekend or anything like that. And so I think that that piece, I have really started to foster friendships and I lean on my friends because they are my village and I'm trying to develop that. And I think I had it pretty solidly set when my first daughter was, very young. I had a very strong support group. But then as those kids, they're all now 9 years old, 9, 10 years old. And, we kind of dispersed different cities and moved away. Some people moved away and things like that. And so now I'm rebuilding that because it has kind of gone off to the wayside. And again, reflecting back, but I think it does take a village. And a lot of times I've had to say, hey, I need help because doing it all doesn't work. And it's at the um, cost of affecting, your family and your ability to parent at your optimal level. So I love that idea and D, you're part of my village. So just so you know, I think that's something that we need to expand on.
For sure, you're part of mine as well.
And I can say too, my 2 cents with this conversation is, you know, um, I will say that friends are the family you choose to have, that you can control and you can choose to have in your life. I think that having your biological family close or far can be a benefit and a curse at the same time. I think for those of us who have, and D, I'm also a social worker and a past therapist in my previous life. And so I think that for those of us who are immigrants, I'm also an immigrant and came here when I was 6. And so I think that when you are trying to get beyond your family of origin and trying to um, take the best you can from that and leave the bad behind, sometimes I think having family involved in your children's life is a double bind because you see the same family patterns repeating, which can be unnerving because that's not what you want repeated in your family. And at the same time, challenging that in the moment with your elders is also really challenging in both of our cultures. And so I do feel like there's benefits and advantages to not necessarily having everybody around you. But at the same time, I agree 100% with the idea of a village. And that's why I think it's such a beautiful metaphor for raising your kids. And my younger brother and his wife have 6 children, and they have definitely, I would say, times like 10 created a village. And they just knew that their extended family was not going to be enough to be able to provide the rides, the activities, the entertainment, the babysitting. And so they really collated a group of people that they consider part of their family, but also part of their natural resources. And to similar to what Alyssa has done, and I've seen this, Alyssa do this on different, in different environments, social media, is to ask for help. And I think that those of us who are able to help, or those of us like me that are not near my grandchildren and sort of want that child experience, we offer ourselves up when we have the opportunity to do that. And so I do feel like broadening the definition of family is really, really important. Um, and also asking for the help that you need. I echo that that is something that can find relief. But I also think, I'll step into your marriage for a little bit to also say that, it's also fair for both partners to have responsibilities, to have their self care, and also have time with the children, and everybody needs to take turns. I wasn't very good at that when I was younger. And I resented my partner a lot for the freedoms that society would give him. But somehow or other, I was supposed to be the mother and therefore responsible for all the childcare and not have any free time, or nobody would justify my friendships as being important. And so it's important to set those expectations and be clear about what you want from your partner and set limits with your family and your friends, because otherwise we get walked all over, and then we have conflicts with ourselves and what we should do, and also with the other people in our lives. And so looking back at those years, I don't think I did myself any favors by trying to do it all and be the superwoman, when I really just wanted to carve out some time for debriefing and just getting away from things. And so, yeah, maybe a couple words of wisdom about that. And so I'm realizing that we're already at 45 minutes. And this time has just totally flown by. And I guess I want to do a check in with all the members in this group to say, is there anything that is like urgent that you had that you want to bring up with this group before we end? Because I promised we wouldn't go over an hour. Not that you guys are going to hold me to it necessarily, but I also want to be respectful of everybody's time that you've given us, to Alyssa and myself. And so, is there anything that anybody has any thoughts that you want to share about anything we've talked about, or a new topic? We have some time if we want to bring up something else as well.
I just like to say that my daughter-in-law, who I think is a great mom, she has um, um, play group every Sunday, almost every single Sunday. She has 2 or 3 women that she meets with, that the a play group, and she's become good friends, and I think they are her support group. So I'm just kind of thinking that's a practical way to develop that village and to have a good time. I mean, enjoy it.
Well, I didn't want to jump in and cut anyone off. So if there's anyone who does have pressing thoughts, please feel free to let us know. I just wanted to say that I just appreciate all the perspectives. Because I know as we kind of wind this back down, and kind of come to the end, I don't know if I'll have the opportunity to say thank you to each and every one of you for your different perspectives and thoughts. I think that we've touched on a lot of different topics, and I think that this is just speaks to what Joji and I have tried to really foster with this podcast. The Deconstructed Woman came out of the idea of having conversations, bringing women together, and kind of touching on those hard topics or those things that are most pressing to us and being able to speak about them. And so I just am so grateful for the opportunity to talk and to hear from each of you, because I think that that's just something we don't always get. We don't always get to have those different perspectives, or to just kind of get that reassuring, comment of like, you're doing a good job, or, I've been there. I think that so many times we get so lost in where we're at right now. But there's such a wealth of knowledge and thoughts and perspectives out there. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone here for your time.
Well, I want to thank you for inviting us to join in on this discussion. I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Same. I echo that. Thank you guys so much.
I think this is such an important thing that you guys are doing, both looking at the different things that are affecting women in our society, and bringing women together to talk about different perspectives. Obviously, we're all unique. We all have different backgrounds, different things that are at the forefront of our mind, and it can be so important to really bring that attention to it. And it can even be healing for other people to hear that, oh yeah, I've struggled with this, or I've had this going on and wasn't sure how to handle it. So it's very validating, affirming, and healing.
I agree. I'm a firm believer in every person you come across, you're going to learn something from, whether you enjoy them or not. And thankfully, I've enjoyed everyone that's here today. But I think that it's going to be a huge something. I've learned something from everything everyone has said. And I'm sure the audience and the listeners have also learned those same exact things. And I think it's really important for people to hear pretty much just that they're not alone and that there's other people going through these issues, especially women who just need to hear this, especially after everything with the election and needing to know that, like, women are usually a village. We create our own connections to people, and we are the people that are going to uplift each other because there's not very many people who will. So knowing that there's a community that you can always turn to is a good thing to have.
And we need to just keep supporting each other.
I agree.
Well, I want to thank you all for taking this time and sharing your opinion. I knew it was going to be a great conversation, and it turned out to be even more wonderful than I could have ever expected. But I shouldn't have been surprised because we invited people that we knew were open minded, really share their experiences and want to give back to women and help raise each other up. And so this is a very specific group of women that we knew was going to really have a rich and diverse uh, conversation. So I thank you all for that. Um, I do, as we say at the end of every podcast, any of our listeners who want to participate with us in the future know how to get through to us through the deconstructedwoman at gmail.com, through Spotify and our podcast platform, as well as to reaching out to Alyssa Marie or myself. I want to thank our participants today for their very deep and complex thoughts and sharing their rich experiences with us. And with that, I'm going to thank everybody for listening. And until next time, we will definitely plan another group experience since this one was so wonderful. And if anybody wants to join us that is listening to us, please let us know. So thank you all. Thank you for listening to our podcast, The Deconstructed Woman. If you liked this podcast, please share it with your friends, rate this episode, or subscribe to be notified of all new content. We want to hear from you, our listener. Do you have thoughts on the discussions we're having? Want to share topic suggestions? Or want to join us for a topic that you're passionate about? Contact us at our email address, thedeconstructedwoman@gmail.com.